It was early fall 1985. I was just a teen headed for 35. I wasn't looking for love. I was enjoying life with my friends. Life was good. Hanging out with bandmates, drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes. We weren't troublemakers. We just liked to sit around, drink coffee, and tell stories at Perkins on Overland Road in Boise. One night, our ritual was interrupted by a familiar face, one that I had watched from afar and had the chance to meet with a different group of friends. We'd all gone to watch a movie, Out of Africa. The only good thing to come out of that movie that night was the opportunity to make a connection. The next night she returned. This time she was alone. I can still see it as vividly as if it were yesterday. Poofy blonde hair, teal slacks, beige blouse, shimmery gray overcoat. She says something to the hostess, looks over to us, pointing, smiling, of course she always smiled, and walks towards us. She wants to hang out with us? That's weird. But I like that she would talk to us. We were, in my mind, and probably the rest of the guys too, social outcasts. It's probably why we weren't out tearing up the town. We weren't wired that way. We were old souls enjoying what old guys do, sitting around drinking coffee and telling lies. This happened night after night for several months. She and I would sometimes stay until 2 or 3 a.m., probably due to the large amounts of caffeine in our systems. Soon our group had dwindled to just 3 or 4 and her. I was all right with that as long as she kept coming. It was February now, and most of us had recovered from the news of the Space Shuttle Challenger's disaster. The talk around the coffee table had focused on what had gone wrong, but there was another potential disaster brewing. I began to have feelings for this older girl. After all, we had been meeting here nearly every night for over 4 months. I doubted in my mind that she could ever date a kid like me. After all, I was only 18 and she was 23. That's quite an age gap. I respected her and never would make an advance, but those feelings kept creeping up on me, though I always found ways to suppress them. Plus, I didn't have the nerve to ask. I am a risk taker, though not physically. I value the health of my body and I'm not a big fan of pain, but I do tend to take the occasional calculated risk. I weighed what the response could be versus the effect of not taking the chance. The chance won and I delivered the card. It was well received. What I mean is, there was no horrified response or chuckle of amusement. No, she seemed to receive it well. In my mind, though, it was as if she thought, it's the least she could do. I felt that maybe she received it as a penance of sorts. You know how the mind can work. When she didn't show up for a few nights, I took it as a bad sign. There's a saying I like to use, no news is good news, but not in this case. I wanted to see her, to talk to her, and to analyze if there were any changes in how she spoke to me. When she finally did show up, we talked as usual, drank the same amount of coffee as usual, spent the same amount of time, and it appeared nothing had changed. No harm, no foul. I took the chance, and she wasn't repulsed. Very good news. The following few nights, my remaining true friends and I met at the same booth drinking the same coffee and eating the same cheesy fries, and I asked the question, do you think I should ask her out officially now? The reply was unanimous. Both of them thought I was crazy not to, so I did. Later that night I mustered the now famous words that you may have heard in a movie. When taking such a large risk, one usually uses the cover of humor. Who doesn't? As she sat down across from me, we talked for a little, while I mustered the courage to ask the question. Finally, I uttered those now famous words. So, what do you think the chances are of a guy like you and a girl like me getting together? The response was not like the movie. The chances were much greater than 1 in a million, she said. I think there's a pretty good chance. The night I asked was the evening before President's Day. I'll remember it always. The next day was awesome because we both had it off. It was a holiday. We spent the whole day together. I made her breakfast. I bought ham and egg croissant sandwiches from Burger King. Even so, it was a fabulous day and life was good. On this day, we held hands for the first time, thanks to Zach, my parents' schnauzer, who had crawled up in my lap. And we sat next to each other in my fantastic 1974 Ford Mustang II, which is a joke for another story. And from that day on, we knew we were made for each other. It has now been 28 years since we first began hanging out at that Perkins. Of course, it isn't a Perkins anymore. And all except for the summer of 1986, another story, we have rarely been apart. We have 3 grown children and are accelerating towards the age where we can begin expecting grandchildren. Life is good, God is good, and coffee is good.